Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to a special episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Audio Wave Network studios, sponsored by the Ford Foundation and a content partner to BridgeDetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey, and my co-host Donna Givens-Davison is taking some much needed time off. She'll be back soon. Until then, send her some prayers and well wishes. Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the east side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Also, there is a listener survey in the description of this podcast, and we are asking you, our listeners, to take it. First off, I want to thank everyone who's already taking time to fill it out. We're hoping to get even more responses, so please click the link in the podcast description to complete our survey. Today, we are happy to welcome back Antoine Bryant. Antoine is the City of Detroit's Planning and Development Director. We were his first interview when he took the job last July, and he is keeping his promise by returning to our hot seat. Is the seat warm enough for you, Antoine?
It's just warm. It ain't hot. I'm good.
Antoine Bryant, welcome back to Authentically Detroit.
Orlando, it's my pleasure. Anytime you call, I always pick up. So it's my pleasure to be here.
I appreciate that. Before we get into it, because we got a lot to cover, there's a lot that a lot of us want to know. But I want to ask you how the day is finding you, and how are you? I know that the world is trying to get everybody back to normal, but some people ain't back to normal in their mental yet. But so I want to check in. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. It's been good to be here. I've been staying busy. There's a lot for us to do here in the city of Detroit, and it's keeping me going. So I can't complain at all. Things are going well.
Good. It's good to see you too. Y'all should see this man. I mean, Detroit has taken to him very well already. Not even a year in. You sharp, Doc.
No,
you sharp.
I've been enjoying my time, and everyone has been incredible. And I must say, my first real time meeting the public was through your platform, and I do appreciate it. And anytime that we can share with the residents of Detroit is a pleasure.
So it's been almost a year.
Not quite.
Well, not quite. It'll be a year in July.
Yep.
How's it going?
It's going well. We've got our department is beginning to grow in planning development. We work seamlessly with some of the other departments, as you well know, HRD, GSD, and we've got some great things in mind and in plan for the city. So really excited. Cool.
So I want to ask you about something that made waves a couple of weeks ago. You were in your budget hearing in front of City Council, and I think it was District 4 Council member Letitia Johnson who asked you about a comprehensive master plan update. I think your response was along the lines of, we have the Strategic Neighborhood Fund. The Planning Commission does small updates all of the time, but in lieu of the S&F neighborhoods, there isn't going to be a plan to comprehensively update the master plan. People are upset about that. What do you say to them?
So, making waves is strong. I'm not sure if we made waves.
It made some waves and some, I got to ask you the questions now.
You absolutely have to ask the questions. So one of the things that we're examining right now, many of the moves that we have done through our neighborhood framework plans, as well as the updates provided by the CPC, have satisfied the requirements, if you will, of updating the master plan. So the CPC does master plan updates incrementally for the last several years. We are aggressively looking at what would be served by a master plan update. And what I shared with the budget at the budget hearing for council, as I shared with them, is that we're not against the idea. I think the idea of a master plan update could be incredibly productive. But what I did say is that it would require there's a cost, financial, as well as human capital. I need more staff to do so. Even though we have a very talented staff with PDD, right now, if we were to undertake a master plan update, I would need at least 3 or 4 more people. And a master plan typically ranges between 1.75 and about $2.25 million.
Oh, we can raise that. I mean, y'all raise money for everything else. I mean,
the PDD doesn't raise any money.
Yeah,
just so you know.
The mayor, the administration figures out ways to pay for things. And so, I want to park here for a minute because the planning studies you said the planning studies sort of satisfy the need for a master plan update, but not every neighborhood is seeing a planning study. So what do you say to folks who are not in targeted areas, not in strategic investment areas on part of the administration? What's their resolve?
No, it's a fair question, and it's one that was asked at the budget hearing, right? One of the things that we've been doing, as I shared with you and shared with your audience in July, for the first 4 or 5 months I was here, I literally pledged that I would visit every neighborhood in this city within the first 14 months, right? And so I'm actually a bit of ahead of schedule on that. As you well know, we've talked about it previously offline. Usually 3 to 4 nights a week, I'm at a community meeting, either virtually or personally, so that residents across the city know that they're being heard. One of the things that I've been sharing is that in addition to the neighborhood framework plans that the city of Detroit's planning department does, we also have planning activities that are in place by DPW and by GSD. So it's not just PDD doing plan activities. Additionally, we support the incremental work done that may look at infrastructure development, that may include streetscape development. So there are other activities happening outside of what would happen from a traditional planning process. Now, again, let me reiterate, using a master plan or implementing a master plan update in and of itself, I think is a good idea. So I never said it was bad. So I want to make sure that part's abundantly clear.
Clear the record, sir.
I want to make sure that part's abundantly clear. The Plan Development Department sees the value in implementing it. But right now, we are making adjustments through other means. If we were to somehow get the resources to do so, then that's something we could examine. But additionally, there is a ramp up that would need to occur if a master plan were to be adopted, right? A master plan typically is about a 2-year project, right? And includes a significant amount of community engagement, as you can imagine, right? Because you really do have to socialize your entire city. And so just the preparation to undergo that is usually, 3 to 4 months in and of itself before you quote unquote even begin the process. So, it's not something that as I said, is a bad idea. It's just, you don't just say, we think we should make it happen, and it just happens, right?
Well, yeah, but we've been asking this question of your predecessor, of the mayor, for a long time. And it seems to go unheard. And I would not be doing my job if I've not asked you, the question around, the master plan,
and that's why I said I never shied from any question from you.
So talk about some of the other planning activities that you mentioned. So if there are neighborhoods that aren't necessarily targeted for strategic neighborhood investments, you said DPW is doing planning in areas, GSD. What does that look like, and what does the impact look like for residents? What are residents seeing?
So that's a great question. So for example, this year alone, Planning and Development Department will be undergoing 4 neighborhood framework plans, right? We'll be doing one in North End. We'll be doing one in Brightmoor. We'll be doing one in Midwest Tireman. And we'll also be doing one in Warren, Connor Creek area, right? And so those will be led exclusively by the Planning and Development Department. Then additionally, we still have activities from SNF, 2, right, that are still undergoing. You're seeing implementation in Warren, West Warren, and Cadue. That's separate from the efforts that I just Cadue.
I know you learning.
I'm trying.
I got you.
I so appreciate you. So that's external to those efforts. We're going to be doing commercial pop-up along Dexter Avenue, right? That's a whole different element from the other ones I just described. You're seeing extensive amount of park reinvestments. We're seeing investments along our streetscapes. I just had a conversation about the great work that our Rehab and Ready program is doing out of the mayor's office, and home stabilization and the provision of single-family homes. So each one of these entities, each one of these projects are across different neighborhoods in the city and are external. to necessarily specifically from PDD.
Yeah.
And so we'll continue to do other things. Right now, we're looking at commercial corridors and stabilizing those across the city. We just had a conversation in our office. We're finishing up some industrial design design guidelines for much of our significant industrial locations across the city. So we have a lot of things on the plate that will address almost all of our neighborhoods.
Okay, I want to ask you, while we're still on the subject of planning studies, one of the things that came out of the Stellantis Community Benefits Agreement was a planning study for the impact zone. Residents are wondering when that's going to happen and when will it get started. So you have any news for folks who are listening as to this thing that came out of the CBA process with Stellantis as a part of the agreement, planning study for the impact zone?
Great question. Great question. The Stellantis CBO is one that we're actively involved in. As was cited, there was to be a study to come from that effort, but there was also a request to look at the resources and use it almost exclusively for single-family home repair. And so one of the things that we want to bring back,
a request from whom?
From the community.
Okay.
And so what we're looking at and what we're going to present to the community, and we can talk about it quickly here, is do we do both, right? Because we can't, right? The amount of money that's been set aside and that was discussed at the outset could do either a really good study and a few homes, or it could do more homes and maybe not a study. And so to be able to do both, the money of portion for it was around $500,000
for the planning study.
Yeah, to be able to do a planning study and to do home repair, we wouldn't be able to do that substantially with $500,000.
You can do either one of them really substantially for $500,000. So if we're talking about home repair, $500,000 is almost an insult to.
That was the money that was approved way before I even got here, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that we've talked about, and we had it at our last during the presentation for the Stellantis CBO, many of the residents did ask us, could we use the resources for single family home repair, principally roof repair. Mm-hmm. And obviously, and this is something that, we always try to share, we will try to respond directly to resident requests. That's the primary purpose of the CBO process in a nutshell. However, one of the things that we wanted to make abundantly clear to the NAC, Neighborhood Advisory Council, is that, as you so rightfully stated, $500,000 will only get us but so many roofs. Mm-hmm. And so if that is quote unquote the desire of the entity, there has to be the understanding that's not going to hit.
It's going to hit a very small amount of people. Okay. Yeah. Do we know when this is starting?
No.
Okay.
Ideally, we would love to see it start this year. There's a possibility of that, but I can't necessarily confirm that just yet.
All right. So Cranes Detroit released article yesterday. Bruce Detroit wrote about this months ago, so I want to go on record and say,
yes, you did.
Olivia Lewis and I wrote about this months ago. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has designated the Jefferson Chalmers area as a floodplain, and what Cranes lifted up yesterday was the significant amount of difficulty that municipalities would have to spend federal funds in areas that are designated as a floodplain. So when the planning study, the first round of the planning studies, Jefferson Chalmers was a part of it. Mm-hmm. I was a part of that. I was a part of that community engagement effort, worked really hard mm-hmm. on the planning study in Jefferson Chalmers. There is a significant amount of investment that is slated on part of the city, on part of Jefferson East Inc. and other nonprofits. What is the city doing? How is the city responding to this? Does this mean the end of SNF over there? Does this mean that we need to look at significant and sizable infrastructure investments before we do any development over there?
Great question. And first of all, I'm glad that you were part of that engagement effort, when it first went down, so that you understand that the city and using consultants and others like yourself to ensure that residents were heard during that purpose, that, there was the original directive to make it a significant impact by the city and Jefferson Chalmers. That was always the goal. That was always the intent. When it was declared a floodplain, last, quarter three, beginning of quarter four of last year,
Mm-hmm.
the city was, very, very dismayed, right? We're like, okay, we've made a tremendous research and study and focus and programmatic work toward supporting and revitalizing Jefferson Chalmers, and now we have this hurdle. So the city has been working for the last several months to, with the feds, to be able to find creative solutions to ensure that we can still get the work done. There was, as you well know, efforts to secure funding for those projects. And when the floodplain kind of label was placed on the neighborhood, it put several of those resources in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the great team over at Housing HRD, led by Julie
Snyder.
Yep. And, Donald Rencher have been working pretty aggressively to try to make sure this still gets done. So the book's not closed. It is still an active issue on our part to ensure that those resources still can come to the community. And we do recognize and continue to work with the nonprofits that have been working, like JEI and others, to continue with those projects. But it's an active issue on our end.
Yeah.
We're not done fighting for that.
Well, I think people will be comforted, especially folks in Jefferson Chalmers, to know that the city is fighting for them.
Absolutely.
And is the city fighting for a removal of that designation?
The city's fighting for either a removal of the designation entirely, or to find a way to ensure that if it has to remain, that we can still have the capacity to be able to receive funds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either one of those would be amenable to us. There are certain things, certain legalities that if it stays in place, meaning the floodplain label stays in place, that it may actually be advantageous for residents as far as recovery funding in the event of a disaster.
Yeah, but they got to pay for insurance that is astronomically.
And that's outside of us. I mean, that's...
Yeah, of course.
So that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
But we want to be able to mitigate and support work that we already done. We recognize Jefferson Chalmers needs reinvestment. We were working aggressively towards that when this happened. And so we still are committed to seeing that reinvestment in that area.
Let's talk about sustainability. I mean, today, as we're recording, it's raining, and I remember working at ECN.
Yes, sir.
When it rained, I would get calls all the time of people just shook and scared in Jefferson Chalmers, especially since we had a great flood in 2014. Nothing like what we saw last summer, but the rain is coming again. And so I want to ask about the sustainability of these, earmarked developments without an investment in the infrastructure or expanding or growing the seawall. Is the city even considering or talking about making that investment to secure the neighborhood and to protect it from flooding?
I can say
it's coming.
I can say very much so. Yes, I've had conversations personally with the leadership of DPW because, and I think I shared with you before, I spent 17 years in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a flood or two, right? And so I understand the fact that climate justice is a real thing and that we have to invest in resiliency infrastructure for every city. And that was evidenced by last year. So there has been concerted efforts looking at everything from reinvestment specifically in Jefferson Chalmers, but also across the entire network, right? And that's everything from more stormwater management systems to resiliency efforts through greenway placement and where that is in our medians, to even analyzation of our infrastructure underground. So all of that is in place. They are aggressively soliciting resources to be able to do so. As you know, the federal government has approved some of the largest infrastructure monies in recent memory, and Detroit is aggressively trying to get their fair share of it.
Raising the seawall included in those conversations?
That has been looked at as part of the conversation. Not only raising the seawall, but also can we look at different models for redesigning what a seawall could look like?
Okay.
So we're really trying to be as creative as possible. Just raising it is only one option that's available out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's also ways of looking at a much more permeable form of mitigation for it. So we are looking at every possible angle to be able to address that side of Detroit.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I got a personal stake in that because when my family came up from Sharkey County, Mississippi.
All right, there you
go. My great grandparents bought a home in the Jefferson Chalmers neighborhood, and that home is still in our family, and it has seen its fair share.
Got it.
of flooding. And so just wanted to name that. Since we're talking about flooding, let's talk about housing. Okay. I want to get your take on the administration's housing policy. How's it going?
It's working. We're looking to do and continue to do more housing. Everyone's aware of the mayor's initial goal of the preservation of 10,000 units of affordable housing, the creation of 2,000 more units of affordable housing. We're ahead of schedule on that. So, that number of housing will still be maintained and preserved and created. We are looking also to diversify not only the product, but also ensuring that we're getting more affordability. And I will be preemptive because I know the question is probably going to come. Our team is also aggressively looking at the challenges with AMI. So I know that's a question because I get asked all the time.
I'm trying to be prophetic on my questions, Antoine Bryant.
I just know I get asked about AMI, and I'm like, I'm not even a housing guy, but I get it, and I can appreciate it. But it is something that's a reality. From a planning standpoint, we're aggressively looking at how our residents enjoy, live, work, and play not only today, but 5 years from now. And so having an appreciation to address that gap that exists in area median income is something that we are sensitive to.
I'm going to ask you about some of the implementation projects that come after planning studies, and most of the housing that is built is multifamily. And I asked the mayor this question too. And the affordable set-asides are not conducive for people with families, like real families. And so what is the administration's single family housing strategy? Or if there is one?
It's interesting. I had a conversation about this just last night with your friend of mine, Mr. Cantrell.
Oh,
literally just last night.
That's funny.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've talked about are some of the challenges that exist in the provision of single family housing in the city of Detroit, using some of the market challenges that exist today. Unfortunately, construction prices have not gone down. To some extent, they've stabilized. Some might even say they're still increasing. And it makes the provision of new single-family housing cost prohibitive. That's the primary reason why you don't see new houses going up.
Well, I'm not suggesting new single-family housing. I think that we have a rich and old housing stock.
Certainly.
I guess my follow-up question would be, absent the development of new single-family housing, what are we doing to sustain the housing stock that we have, both vacant, I know the rehab and ready part, but occupied single-family houses, especially for folks who are, low to moderate income, who can't afford to fix it up. The city I think there was a significant investment from the ARPA funds around home repair, but it's not nearly enough. I think we are in a home repair crisis in the city of Detroit. What are we doing about it?
Can't argue with that right now. We have a significant single-family home repair issue in this city that affects our seniors, that affects most of our residents, not just our seniors. We are aggressively moving forward with redressing that issue with our seniors, and you'll begin to see roof replacements and home repair starting very, very soon.
From the ARPA program?
Correct.
So that's about what, 1,200? What was the number?
It's a little over 1,200.
Yeah, 1,200. Yeah.
So that's being led by, our team there at the mayor's office and under HRD, and we're really excited about that. But to your point, there's a lot of money that was allotted through us to ARPA. But quite frankly, we're trying to ensure that all of that money gets directly to the city of Detroit. It goes through the state. And sometimes things kind of get hung up in Lansing. And so we have a very consistent and dedicated team that tries to ensure that the spigot stays open, but sometimes it flows and sometimes it trickles, right? And so we're trying to get all those dollars in the hands of Detroiters as soon as possible. Then additionally, and this, I can't, make sure I don't want to miss this. One of the things that we're also trying to do is make sure we have enough people to do the work. Right. I mean,
I saw an announcement yesterday.
That's a real issue where, quite frankly, we've got more homes to work on than we have people that actually do the work to fix the homes. And so I've not been joking, but I tell people all the time, if you could do sheetrock, drywall, plumbing, or whatever, I can get you a job in a week, right? I mean, because the city literally needs people that can do that kind of work, and I'm not kidding about that. You know, have your audience, your callers, let me know, because there are definitely homes that need that kind of work, and we just don't have enough people to do it.
Yeah. Or enough resources.
Correct.
I mean, you know, the University of Michigan Poverty Solutions and DMAX released a report last year, and this is kind of lowballing it, that we have, I think they said, around 27,000 homes in disrepair.
That's lowballing it.
Yeah, that's lowballing it. And so we have to do something, right?
Agreed.
And is that a priority for the mayor's office?
It is a priority for the mayor's office. I mean, you, I'm sure, saw the mayor's presentation on the state of the city. We talked about many of the successes that we have, but also our concentration on ensuring that Detroiters have safe places to live, work, and play. And we've been, you know, some of the quote unquote work and play opportunities get a lot of the publicity because those are bigger. But I can tell you conclusively that the mayor's office and the city of Detroit is very committed to ensuring people have a safe place to live as well.
Yeah. So I had Anika Goss, Detroit Future City.
She's awesome.
On the podcast yesterday. Detroit Future City recently released a report looking at the lack of mortgages in being given in the city, particularly Black folks. The report sort of laid bare the system of inequity that contributes to the disparity of Black folks being able to get a mortgage in this city. And I know that the city has tried to manufacture and engineer certain programs like Detroit Home Mortgage and other programs to get folks approved. But the fact is that white folks are buying homes and getting mortgages in the city of Detroit at a higher rate than, you know, qualified, credit worthy Black folks. Are you guys looking at this? Are you guys advocating and in conversations with the private banking industry to figure out how to fix it and maybe other alternative ways of getting folks financing and mortgages here in the city?
The city is definitely,
because the market crazy right now. It's nuts.
The market is crazy. The city's definitely looking at it and talking to many of our banking partners that are very supportive and have been partners throughout SNF and other initiatives to talk about this very core issue. Additionally, one of the things that we have been looking at is increasing relationships with some of our local credit unions, which oftentimes are more nimble, quite frankly.
Yeah, call me. I'm a chair of one.
See, you know the drill. There you go. So, you know, we're looking at that all the time as well, and to make that opportunity available to our residents. But that issue that's affecting, you know, Black folks in Detroit is happening to Black folks in Houston and happening to Black folks in New York City as well. You know, my wife and I were talking about friends of ours who got denied for a mortgage, and they are very comfortable and, you know, got in Houston and couldn't get a house that they deserve and that they have the resources to do. So it's a national issue, but it's something that we are looking at here in the city of Detroit. And I think it's important that your listeners know that it's not something we're letting slide. Yeah.
So one of the other things that the report outlined is the lack of appraisers with, you know, I want to say it this way, with cultural intelligence around how our city works, right? So in the United States, nationally, under 2% of appraisers are Black, right? Is the city looking at that too?
What I would offer there, and that's a stat that I'd heard several years ago, and then unfortunately the number hasn't changed. I like to call that a growth opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Because Anika and I were having this conversation. Who wakes up and says, "Hey, I want to be an appraiser"?
Bruh, the question I had is how many Black appraisers you know?
Maybe one.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a real opportunity for us as well as allies to be much more involved in the process. It's something that I think is a real opportunity for those. You don't have to be a PhD in economics or something to be an appraiser.
Yeah.
Right? The process actually isn't as complicated as most people think, and we just need more either African Americans or those that understand our community to be appraisers. I mean, that's really what the gap is, quite frankly.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. I think this is my last question. I'm gonna get you out of the hot seat. With all of the developments happening along the riverfront and the planned developments for greenways all across the city, most importantly, the Joe Louis Greenway, how are you guys ensuring that there won't be a significant change or shift in housing values in the adjacent neighborhoods that will displace current residents?
It's a great question, and it's something that we took to heart months ago, right? I got here in July, sort of becoming involved in conversation for the JLG, the Joe Louis Greenway, shortly thereafter. Additionally, I was appointed to the board of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, right? And so we talk about the connection of all these greenways on a pretty regular basis. I can say for sure that the Riverfront Conservancy, and once we really get to all the protocols and governance up for Joe Louis Greenway, I have been intimately involved in our communities, with engaging our residents to let them know what's coming down. But from an internal city standpoint, we're beginning to look at all of the properties where JLG is going through. As you well know, it goes through over 27 neighborhoods. It's going to touch every single council district. And so we're looking at literally and figuratively all of the homes and all the dirt that's going to touch. And much of it goes right by single-family households and single-family neighborhoods. There's also a significant amount that goes in close proximity to some of our industrial sites, right? But when it's going through our residential neighborhoods, we're looking at, okay, are these ones where there are residents that own their homes? How do we ensure that the ownership there is consistent, right? I mean, that's usually where some of the challenges comes in. If it's an absentee landlord, or if it's vacant land, that's where it gets a little dicey. One of the levers that we have as a city of Detroit that not many cities have had, i.e. in Atlanta with the Beltline, or i.e. New York with the High Line, which went through much more commercial properties in the latter, is that if it's vacant land, much of the vacant land is actually owned by us, right? So we can protect it and ensure that it's made available to residents. That was a situation in Atlanta, right? And so if you've had your friends or any colleagues that are in the proximity to the Beltline, that is why you saw, now there are $1 million townhomes going up by the Beltline, right?
I know.
In areas that would nobody have gone to 15 years ago. Let's be clear. And so the fact that much of where we're going is either through or by residents that actually own the dirt, or if it's dirt that's owned by us, we have much more ability to control the use of that dirt than some of our colleagues in other parts of the country. So we are looking intensely to ensure that that real estate can be managed and will not price our residents out.
All right, last question for you. The mayor has been talking a lot about, fixing the city aesthetic, right? Making sure that we look beautiful. And there are so many ways that and methods that he has employed to do that, demolition being one of them. But I think every year we have this scare of folks afraid of their homes being in tax foreclosure. And it feeds the beast that eventually could end up like on the demolition list, right? It's a symptom, right? And so right now there's a proposal in front of City Council around the split tax rate that will sort of incentivize residents by splitting the tax, because we get these high tax bills in the summer and in the winter, and people really don't be paying bills. Like, people don't pay high bills like that. Like, split it up over the month. So it's sort of a progressive proposal. It's helpful toward folks that own vacant land who are sitting on it, and are investors, to sort of discourage investors from holding on to that land for too long. Are you familiar with the split tax rate proposal? What do you think of it?
I think, first of all, your initial assertion that the taxes are a challenge for households is very much a thing, and that's across income ranges, right? Whether you make 20,000 or you make
because nobody like paying
let's
those
be clear, right? So let's make that's a much more egalitarian than people even appreciate. I think there's some merits to the split tax. I think it's something that our residents need to fully understand and grasp because there are some nuances to it. I think the challenge that many Detroiters have had, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that they've been overtaxed for quite some time, and so even when you have the opportunity for split into tax, many of us are still addressing the overtaxation from several years ago, and so even when there is a viable,
well, residents are contending with that.
Correctly.
I don't think institutions are bothering with it at all.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
I hit
go
that.
ahead.
My bad.
No, you're okay.
But no, it's you're absolutely right. I'm talking specifically about residents.
Okay.
Let me be clear. So I think what we're looking to do is ensuring that this is a model that will be viable. I think it's important that our residents have the capacity to be able to pay their taxes, and we're trying to look at methods that will be most amenable to our residents. And this is one that does have some possibilities that could be an asset, but I think the jury's still out as to whether all of our residents will be able to benefit from it.
All right, Antoine Bryant, Director of the City of Detroit's Planning and Development Department. I'm going to let you out the hot seat. Thank you so much for saying yes, man.
It's always a pleasure, brother. Always.
If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. It's time for shout outs. You have anybody you want to shout out? Who you want to shout out, Mr. Antoine Bryant?
Wow, I wasn't expecting that. There's about 2 or 3 people I'll definitely shout out quickly. Katie Trudeau.
Yeah.
Katie Trudeau deserves a shout out.
We gonna miss Katie Trudeau
Katie
over in
Trudeau
planning and development. She was a real one.
There you go. Yes, she's our soon-to-be outgoing deputy director, but is not leaving the city of Detroit. She will still be around. I will let her give her props when she gets her new position, so I won't say that right now, but she's going to be a tremendous asset still to the city of Detroit. So I definitely want to shout her out. And then a good friend of mine, Tiffany Jackson. She's a superstar.
I love Tiffany.
Tiffany Jackson deserves a shout out, Doc. She's the bomb. And has definitely been one of the people that's kind of got me used to things here in Detroit. So I got to give her a shout out. And those are the 2 that come to mind. And then, lastly, big shout to my guy, Jermaine Ruffin. That's the homie right there.
Listen,
that's the homie right there.
Over at Invest Detroit now.
He's doing big things at Invest Detroit.
Host of The Streets Are Planning, one of our favorite podcasts.
There you go.
Yeah.
So big shouts to Invest Detroit and then Jermaine Ruffin, my guy.
Yeah, that's my dude too. I want to shout out Donna Givens Davison.
Hey.
She's out. Y'all know she lost her mom, so y'all make sure y'all send some prayers up for her. And our trusted and great longtime producer JG for always holding down the fort. Being here. So we appreciate. He gave himself an applause. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We want you to catch the wave.